Hola a todo el mundo y bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Sade. Soy una abogada afrolatina licenciada y practicando las leyes criminales, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a hablar del caso de Maxwell Anderson. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, the case we're going to talk about today is a case that left me completely speechless. In all of my time as a practicing and licensed criminal attorney, there are very few cases that leave me at a complete loss for words. This case proves that there are truly people amongst us who are considered walking evil. The actions in this case were devilish. They were heinous. They were malevolent. They were malicious. They were demonic. They were absolutely satanic. And this is the case of Maxwell Anderson. Before we talk about Maxwell and what he's already been convicted of doing, let's talk about beautiful, absolutely stunning, gorgeous little 19-year-old queen that found herself the victim of his heinous acts. Her name is Sade Carlina Robinson. Sade Carlina Robinson is a beautiful little chocolate princess that was born on May 10th of 2004. If you guys are wondering to yourselves why I called her a chocolate princess and not just a princess, it's because growing up as a dark-skinned chocolate woman, and I'm going to make it my mission to say this, the world wasn't always so kind. I think that now the world has come around to see the beauty in all shades of everyone, but specifically being a chocolate woman wasn't always the best experience growing up. So I say that to say she is a gorgeous, or was a gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful little chocolate drop. At the time of her passing, Sade was merely 19 years old, and she was studying criminal justice at Milwaukee Area Technical College. According to Sade's mother, she had dreams of eventually joining the military. In addition to her studies, Sade was also working at a restaurant called the Pizza Shuttle in Milwaukee, and she was known as a really responsible and reliable coworker by everyone that worked with her. And let's talk about the reason why Sade is no longer with us. This 34-year-old bastard by the name of Maxwell Anderson. At 34 years old, Maxwell was almost twice Sade's age, but that didn't stop him from trying to get to know her romantically. As you can see by the photos that I'm putting in this video of her, Sade was an absolute beauty, and I have no idea what made her want to even consider this unkempt beast. I am going to say this next statement unapologetically. So argue with your mama, argue with your ancestors, argue with your cousins, argue with your grandparents, argue with your daddy, argue with your brother, argue with your sister, and argue with yourself. But no one will rid me of the notion that a 34-year-old trying to date a 19-year-old is not sick and sinister in and of itself. What on earth, as an almost 35-year-old man, do you have in common with someone young enough to be your kid? Again, argue amongst yourselves, because this is not something y'all gonna change my mind about. That being said, Sade and Maxwell met amongst a group of friends in person, not on a dating app, and she agreed to do this bum a favor by going out with him. On April 1st, 2024, Sade had finished working her shift at the Pizza Shuttle, and she was preparing to meet Maxwell for dinner. The pair then went to this restaurant called the Twisted Fisherman in Milwaukee, and they had a dinner and enjoyed their time there. After dinner, Sade still felt charitable, and she did him another favor by going out to drinks with him at a place called Duke's on the Water in Milwaukee. After leaving Duke's, Sade went back to this bum's home around 9 p.m. that evening. Unfortunately for her, and unfortunately for this world, quite frankly, that would be the last time time anyone would ever see her alive. The very next day, on April 2nd of 2024, concern began to grow when Sade didn't show up for her shift at the pizza shuttle. Because she was always known as reliable, responsible, and just an outright wonderful person, Sade's coworkers found it surprising that she wouldn't at least call in to work and explain why she wouldn't be there. Because they were so concerned, they then notified the police that she was missing. Do you know what's also very interesting? The very same day that her coworkers reported her missing, her 2020 blue Honda Civic was found charred and burned near 30th Street in Lisbon in Milwaukee. After discovery of her vehicle, surveillance footage would actually catch this broke bum bastard brokey on the bus getting a ride back home. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with riding the bus, but in this case there is, and if you want to fight with me, fight. Although Sade was officially reported missing 2 days prior, on April 2nd of 2024, her mother, Sheena Scarborough, wasn't notified until 2 days later, on April 4th of 2024. When officers notified Sheena of her daughter's disappearance, she was actually able to help them track her daughter's cell phone because the pair was actually tracking each other's phones for safety, which is absolutely normal, common, and actually important to do in today's climate. Also, from a 2024 Columbia University report statistic, Black women are 20 times more likely to be murdered in the state of Wisconsin than are their white counterparts. So, I mean, maybe that's another reason that Sheena thought it was extraordinarily crucial to be tracking her daughter's movements. Eventually, investigation led law enforcement and prosecutors to discover that Maxwell Anderson not only murdered Sade, he dismembered her corpse. And then he randomly sprinkled her different body parts all throughout Milwaukee County. While Sade's torso, right breast, and leg were discovered, by the time that Maxwell was taken to trial, her head was still not located. It's also important to note that at some point during their investigation, a confidential informant informed law enforcement that Maxwell had actually planned to murder and dismember Sade. That brings about many questions in my mind, because who is the informant? Not that it's a requirement to be told, right? But just in my mind, who's the informant? Because if it's one of Sade's friends that introduced her to him and then later knew that he was going to do this to her and was planning to do this to her, like, what? Regardless, Maxwell was ultimately arrested and charged with 4 different charges. First-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson with the intent to destroy property. Maxwell's trial was televised, but it was relatively short compared to some of the trials that we've seen on this channel. It was only around 6 or 7 days, so maybe like a full week, not a work week, but like a full week. Before we get into the actual trial coverage, I saw some news stories of her family members prior to trial that I think it's important that you guys see too.
Their daughter was found dead and dismembered after a first date last April. It's an unimaginable pain the parents of Sade Robinson simply cannot escape.
1 week from today, the trial is expected to start for their daughter's accused killer. Fox 6's Bria Jones is here in the studio after talking with Sade's parents about their unwavering fight for justice. Bria?
Ted, Mary, for more than a year now, Sade's parents have dealt with sleepless nights, dark days, and a deep, painful emptiness. Tonight, for the first time together, her parents discuss life after tragedy. The sunrise, warm, radiant, and full of promise, resembling the light Sade Carlina Robinson's parents say she carried within.
She had the most angelic glow and aura around her.
A glow extinguished before reaching its full potential.
This is so difficult. We want our baby in the physical realm, and she did not deserve to be taken like this.
On April 1st, 2024, prosecutors say 19-year-old Robinson disappeared after a first date with 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson. Within 24 hours, her car was found torched and her severed leg with pink toenail polish discovered in Warnemont Park. In the following days, weeks, and months, more human remains and body parts were located throughout Milwaukee County.
That had me on edge.
Some discovered inland, others washing up along Lake Michigan, reaching as far as Waukegan, Illinois.
Every time I seen a 414 area code call me, my heart would start palpitating because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Robinson was born May 10, 2004, to Carlos Robinson and Sheena Scarborough. To them, she was and is everything.
At what point did you realize that your child was missing and she wasn't coming back?
I think when they came to my house, when the sheriff department came like 1 o'clock in the morning to get my DNA, it kind of hit home because I was in denial, and I would tell Sheena that it's not her. It's got to be a logical explanation for this, and I'm still probably in denial to some point. I can't help it. I just can't accept this. Mentally I can't accept it. I feel like I might lose the last piece of my sanity if I do.
Scarborough says she had just saw Sade the day before she vanished.
I just got in at 1 o'clock on April the 3rd, and there's a loud bang at the door. I just seen my baby that Sunday on Easter. We just did family dinner at my parents'. Monday morning, she FaceTimes me on her way to work. That Monday morning is the last time Mommy got to talk to her baby.
Now, this is how she hears Sade's voice.
That's Sade. It's my baby.
Maxwell's first day of trial began on May 28th of 2025. On this day, Assistant District Attorney Ian Vance Curzon delivered the opening statement on behalf of the prosecution. In his opening statement, the prosecutor detailed the 4 different charges that Maxwell was facing, as well as the story as to how Maxwell eventually got charged and how the evidence pointed to him. He further stated that on April 2nd of 2024, around 5:20 p.m., 2 young men informed law enforcement that they had found Sade's dismembered leg.
Ladies and gentlemen, the judge just read you the preliminary instructions. That is the law that is to guide you as you listen to the evidence in this case. And what I'm going to ask you to do now and ask you to do at the end of trial is 2 things. And there are 2 things that the judge just mentioned during those instructions. Use your common sense and search for the truth. That is your job. Over the course of the rest of this week and into next week, you are going to hear testimony from the witness stand. You are going to see exhibits. You are going to see a lot of exhibits and hear a lot of testimony. And all of it at the end is going to boil down to your ability to use your common sense and search for the truth. Your duty is to come to a fair and rational conclusion as to what the evidence shows. And that's how you do that. You apply the law given to you by the judge to the facts that you decide occurred, and decide if Maxwell Anderson is guilty of the charges brought before this court. Maxwell Anderson is charged with 4 crimes that have just been defined to you, related to the disappearance and murder of 19-year-old Sade Robinson that occurred on the night of April 1st, 2024 into April 2nd, 2024. Sade Robinson was a 19-year-old young woman. She had an apartment on the Lower East Side, 1858 North Commerce. She was in school. She worked a job. She worked at Pizza Shuttle on the Lower East Side. She was everything that you would expect a 19-year-old girl to be. That day, April 1st, 2024, Sade Robinson went to work at Pizza Shuttle like any other day. And she made plans to meet up with the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, that evening after work. And she wouldn't know it at the time that she left her apartment that morning, but she would never return. Sade and Maxwell Anderson met up for dinner and drinks at the Twisted Fisherman restaurant in Milwaukee. They then went to Duke's bar on Water Street, and then they went back to Maxwell Anderson's house on the south side of Milwaukee around 9:20 in the evening on April 1st. After leaving Duke's and going to the defendant's house, Sade would never be seen alive again. That night, she was murdered by Maxwell Anderson. Her body was dismembered by Maxwell Anderson in a vicious and gruesome manner. And then Maxwell Anderson attempted to make her disappear from this world by discarding her body into body parts into Lake Michigan, and then taking her car and burning it behind an abandoned building near 30th and Lisbon. The evidence in this case is going to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Maxwell Anderson intentionally killed Sade Robinson and then sought to have her disappear from this world. He cut up her body, tried to get rid of her body parts, and tried to cover it up in any way that he could. For doing this, he has been charged with 4 crimes: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, arson of property for burning the car, and hiding a corpse. The evidence in this case, the testimony you're going to hear, is going to be voluminous. The judge just told you you're going to be allowed to take notes throughout the course of this trial. I would strongly encourage that you do that. The reason for that is so that when you're back there deliberating at the end of this trial, you're able to look back and understand the significance of things that you heard and remember it, because there will be a lot. So I would encourage you to do so. But at the end of this trial, the evidence will establish that Maxwell Anderson is the one who killed and dismembered Sade Robinson, and it'll prove him guilty of those 4 crimes. This is my opportunity to summarize the evidence so that you have sort of a roadmap as the trial progresses, and so you understand the context of what you're hearing about when you hear about it.
Before we get into what defense could possibly even muster to say during opening statement, let me give you my thoughts on the prosecution's opening. The prosecutor wrote down a lot of the details here, and I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But specifically, myself included, I find that writing down stuff before I say it kind of gives me a crutch. So instead of looking directly at the jurors, I will look down a lot of times. And that's just not how you want to present yourself. You want to come across more confident. You know the story. There might be details that you want to make sure to touch on, but there should be bullet points. You don't want to write full sentences, because that will instead allow you, or make for you, reading exactly what happened instead of just telling the jurors what occurred. I don't feel like his opening statement was the best, but he provided a lot of detail. And that's just pretty much that. After the prosecution's opening statement, defense attorney Anthony Cotton just got up there and said some words on behalf of Maxwell.
Good morning. The state began by using the phrase common sense. You heard it yesterday during jury selection, and you heard it again today in the state's opening. And they're using the phrase common sense because they want you to ignore the mountain of reasonable doubt that exists in this case. I want to start by telling you guys that much of what Mr. Vance Curzan just talked to you about, we don't dispute. So a lot of this trial isn't in dispute. The timeline, the fact that Max met Sade, Max had met her, went on a date with her, that they went to the Twisted Fisherman, that they went to Duke's, that they were out together that night, that they went back to Max's house, none of that is in dispute. The fact that body parts wash up at Warrimont Park, the fact that body parts are found at 31st and Galena, the fact that those body parts belong to Sade, nobody here is disputing any of that. It's horrible what happened to Sade. It's horrible. Nobody deserved that. And what the state wants you to do is use the emotion of that along with this phrase like common sense and use that emotion to convict Mr. Anderson. But I implore you in this trial, your most important job as jurors is to study the evidence closely that's introduced by the district attorney's office. We have no burden of proof. Max is not required to prove anything. The entire burden lies here and rests here entirely on the district attorney's office. And it's the highest burden in the land to marshal together, to put together enough evidence to bring to you to show that Max killed Sade and that he committed those other crimes. There are a few pieces of evidence that the state will rely heavily on. Max near the scene of the car, Max, when it's burning, Max being the last person to go on a date with Sade. And that's frankly why law enforcement zeroed in on Max. You are going to hear that the amount of law enforcement resources that were spent in this case by the Sheriff's Department, the Milwaukee Police Department, the FBI, the amount of resources that were spent on this case, I think is probably unparalleled in Milwaukee history. The amount of money and time and effort that was put into collecting video evidence, to searching Maxwell's home, to interviewing coworkers, interviewing people that might know him, an immense investigation. And the state knows that there are serious holes in their case. They know it. They know that there's reasonable doubt, and that's why they're coming at you with this phrase, like common sense. So let's talk about that. There is absolutely no reason for Max to commit a crime like this. What you're going to hear in this trial is that Max and Sade lined up a date together like any couple of youngsters do, and they lined up a date at Twisted Fisherman. This is a place that Max used to work. You'll hear that they went there, they had dinner, and it was an ordinary evening. From Twisted Fisherman, as the state just told you, they went to Duke's. This is another place where Max is known. There was no secret place that Max took Sade that night, nowhere that anybody wouldn't have known him or recognized him. These are former places he worked and coworkers that he interacted with. And what I didn't hear was the theory of why Max did this, how Max did this, but I think what I heard in opening just now is that Max must have done this at his home. That seems to be the theory. Max brought Sade back to his home and killed her. Why? It's a normal date. You'll see them on camera footage leaving Duke's. You'll see them, Sade driving back to his place. You'll see them going there. In this timeline you were just given, I don't know how many witnesses they're going to call throughout this trial to put in this video or that video, but one thing you'll see throughout this is that we don't dispute any of that timeline, that they went out together and went back to Max's house, but that doesn't mean he killed her. How did he do it, and why did he do it? Why would he ever do something like that? If Max killed Sade in his home, if it happened in that location, as I think they're offering to you, there would be a mountain of DNA evidence. There would be blood. There would be some form of DNA. And I listened carefully when I heard the state's opening, because yes, it's gruesome. Yes, it's horrible. Nobody deserves it. But what was glaringly missing from what I heard was any discussion about DNA evidence.
I found Mr. Cotton's opening statement to be quite generic. I think a very generic delivery of an opening statement, or very generic opening statement on behalf of defense, will always point to reasonable doubt, or will mostly point to reasonable doubt. Sure, my client may or may not have done it, but can the prosecution prove it, is basically what he said. He didn't offer an alternate explanation. He didn't explain what else could have possibly happened. He didn't admit to it and then try to justify it like we've seen in other cases. He just said, this is what happened, and that's just kind of what it is. It fell flat. It was audacious. It was disrespectful. It was terrible. Boo. After opening statements and in continuation of the first day of Maxwell's trial, the prosecution called numerous witnesses to the stand, to include one of the people who found Sade's dismembered leg, one of Sade's coworkers, Sade's leasing agent, and some others. The second and third day of Maxwell's trial continued on May 29th and May 30th of 2025. The second day of Maxwell's trial continued with the prosecution calling numerous witnesses. But on the third day, remember I said that there was surveillance footage from the bus? The prosecutors showed the jury on this day. The fourth day of trial continued on June 2nd of 2025. On this day, the jurors heard from one of Maxwell's tenants who explained the extraordinarily disgusting and despicable living conditions that he was living in renting a space from Maxwell. In addition to seeing photos of the horrendous conditions that Maxwell lived in, the jurors were able to see footage of Sade graciously doing her charity work, both at the Twisted Fisherman and Duke's on the Water, and footage of Maxwell Anderson's arrest.
Pause that clip at 16 seconds. What did we just observe?
We observed Sade Robinson walking into the Twisted Fisherman from the east.
And that was at about 5:20?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So by 5:21, they're seated together at the bar.
Correct.
32 head to southbound Hampton on, 45 southbound Hampton on for Apollo return for highway versus Chicago.
Any weapons items, sir?
No.
Head on, stop.
What's going on?
There's somebody just radio it.
124 dispatch.
Stop. What's one up? The key to in the ignition?
Yes. 124, yeah, one in custody.
Trial days 5 and 6 continued on June 3rd and June 4th of 2025. Over these next 2 days, jurors heard from numerous officer witnesses about the work that they did on Sade's case. The 7th day of trial continued on June 5th of 2025. On this day, the prosecution rested their case at approximately 3:30 p.m., and the defense did the same but without calling a singular witness. After both sides delivered their closing arguments, the jurors got the case for a short period of time to deliberate before returning with their verdict the next morning on June 6th of 2025.
At this point, I have received verdicts. They are in a proper legal fashion. Who is my foreperson? May I have your name and number for the record?
Juror number 1, Muriel Sunstein.
And you did sign these 4 verdicts and date them today?
I did.
Thank you. I will now read them into the record. As to count 1, the verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information. As to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of mutilating a corpse as charged in count 2 of the information. As to count 3, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of arson of property other than a building as charged in count 3 of the information. As to count 4, we, the jury, find the defendant, Maxwell Anderson, guilty of hiding a corpse as charged in count 4 of the information.
Do you know what's interesting? It took the jurors 36 minutes to convict this bug of absolutely everything that he did. Before I deliver my opinions on the verdict, Sade's family members and loved ones also provided their opinions, and I want you guys to see.
Nothing will bring Sade Robinson back to her family, but emotions were high as they left the courtroom after learning the verdict. You can see a deep embrace by Robinson's mom. Support definitely needed for this family.
It's not just about the hugs, it's about the colors too. Robinson loved ones came out to the courtroom all wearing pink, as you see there. Pink was her favorite color. An empowering choice for them as they got ready to speak on the verdict that they have long waited for. Our Bill Miston and Bria Jones have been following this trial from the beginning.
Let's start with Bria and the Robinson family, who I know you spoke with today, Bria.
Ben, this is a moment 14 months in the making for Sade Robinson's family. Her mother speaking to the media this afternoon and her father speaking exclusively to Fox 6. For them, they say that this guilty verdict is bittersweet because pieces of Sade Robinson still have not been found. On the long, winding steps of justice, a guilty verdict on all counts in the killing and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Carlina Robinson.
Karma's a and I will continue to fight.
For Robinson's mother, Sheena Scarborough, the verdict is an extension of her shining light to a path forward.
She solved her own case. She will be forever remembered as an angel.
After a 2-week trial, a jury convicted 34-year-old Maxwell Anderson in Robinson's gruesome murder. Anderson killed Robinson after a first date, dismembered her body, then dumped her body parts around Milwaukee and in Lake Michigan before setting her car on fire on April 2nd, 2024.
I don't feel relief because I don't know what he did with the rest of my daughter.
The days in court taking a toll on her father, Carlos Robinson.
I dreamt about him every night. Every night. His face was in my dreams every night.
Her mother had this outburst towards Anderson after pictures of Robinson's tortured body were shown in court.
He is a devil. But like something like going through this in court, like what you expect? She the mother, we have to hear that.
On the day of this verdict, Robinson's head still hasn't been found.
How does it feel to have the verdict but still not to have her crown? I know that's something we've talked about.
It's the most agonizing, painful thing, Bria. Like this, I just don't see how a demonic type energy can have no remorse and sit there.
A 36-minute verdict is probably one of the quickest that we've seen on this channel. But regardless, I think that the jurors correctly saw through Maxwell's BS. Maxwell is guilty of sin. He has to be psychologically unstable. Because who on earth, without provocation, decides that they're going to kill and dismember someone just for funsies? Maxwell, you're a dirtbag. You're a bum, you're a loser, you're a lame. And to rid the world of the potential that this beautiful woman would have provided is absolutely insane. I have such strong feelings about this case. It actually brings sadness to my heart because he was so malicious. And because of his actions, the world will never see the potential that Sade had to offer it. If you guys want to go through Maxwell's sentencing when the time arises, please let me know and I'll see if we can do a short video on that as well. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.